This video covers sensitive and disturbing topics, including child abuse and a tragic death. Viewer discretion is strongly advised, as the content may be emotionally challenging for some. Please take care while watching.
The body of a little Australian girl is found dumped in the back blocks of America. Her dad has some suspicious holes in his memory. Her stepmother has been locked up, but so far hasn't been charged with murder. So what happened to 10-year-old Zahra Baker? It's a crime that's horrified and fascinated people on both sides of the Pacific.
What does it take for a child to disappear into thin air and no one to notice for weeks? How does a little girl, one who had already fought battles tougher than most adults ever will, vanish while living under the same roof as her own father? And when the truth finally unravels, why does it feel like justice barely scratches the surface? This is the case of Zahra Clare Baker, a 10-year-old girl who had survived cancer, adapted to life with a prosthetic leg, and endured unimaginable hardships. But in the end, it wasn't illness that stole her life. It was the very people who were supposed to protect her. And the more we look into this case, the more unsettling the questions become. The truth of what happened to Zahra is not just tragic. It's disturbing. It's infuriating. And for some, it's still unresolved. Today, we uncover the full story and why many believe the wrong person is behind bars. Zahra Baker was born in Wagga Wagga, Australia, in 1999. From the very start, she was a fighter. At just 6 years old, she was diagnosed with bone cancer, which eventually led to the amputation of her leg. The treatment also left her with severe hearing loss, forcing her to wear hearing aids in both ears. But if you ask anyone who knew her, they wouldn't describe Zahra as weak or fragile. They would tell you she was full of life. Tough, resilient. Her mother, Emily Dietrich, struggled with postpartum depression after Zahra's birth and, unable to care for her, gave custody to Zahra's father, Adam Baker. Adam, by all accounts, was an average working-class man who took his daughter and moved in with his parents in Giru, Queensland. For a while, it seemed like Zahra had the stability she needed. But then Adam met someone online, and that's when everything changed. If you're finding this story compelling, give it a like, subscribe, and share with those who might be interested. Elisa Fairchild Baker was not your typical stepmother. To the outside world, she was a woman seeking love, but in reality, her relationships were built on deception. By the time she met Adam online, she had already been married 6 times. Her past was littered with broken vows, men left behind, and a pattern of moving on before the dust could settle. In at least one of those cases, she was still legally tied to a husband when she found the next. But for Elisa, marriage wasn't about companionship. It was about control. Each relationship was a stepping stone, a means to an end, and the next one was always just a message away. She crafted an identity of mystery, painting herself as dark, misunderstood, and different. Online, she was a gothic queen, brooding and untouchable. But offline, the reality was much bleaker. Elisa's life was a patchwork of manipulation and lies, and wherever she went, chaos followed. She didn't just influence those around her. She dominated them, bending them to her will through intimidation and deceit. When she became Zahra's stepmother, her cruelty had a new target. At first, Zahra was the bright, hopeful girl she had always been, despite her struggles. But something began to change. Neighbors noticed the bruises, the sudden quiet, the way she seemed to shrink into herself. Teachers started asking questions. Why had she suddenly been pulled from school? Why did she flinch at certain sounds? Reports flooded in. Physical abuse, emotional torment, blatant neglect. But no matter how many red flags were raised, Zahra remained trapped in that home. A child full of life was slowly dimming. The warnings were there. The bruises told the story no one wanted to hear. But somehow, No one intervened in time, and in just 2 years, Zahra would be gone forever.
Secret Police 911, where's your emergency?
Yeah, my daughter is missing.
I'm sorry? Your daughter's missing?
A ransom note, sloppy handwriting, hastily scrawled on a Duke Energy envelope, stuck to the windshield of Adam Baker's truck. The demand? $1 million. But something was off, very off. The note wasn't about Zahra at all. It was addressed to Mark Coffey, Adam's boss. The supposed kidnappers, it seemed, had taken the wrong girl. Think about that for a moment. A kidnapper who doesn't even know who they're taking? A ransom note addressed to the wrong person? And the biggest question of all, why would anyone believe that a small-town tree worker had $1 million to pay? The inconsistencies piled up. Adam Baker made 2 separate 911 calls that day. One for the fire in his backyard at 5:30 a.m. and another at 2 p.m. to report Zahra missing. That's nearly 9 hours in between. 9 hours before calling the police about a supposedly kidnapped child.
No one has seen your daughter since 2:30 this morning?
No.
Okay.
It was a delay that raised eyebrows immediately. And then another issue. No one had actually seen Zahra in weeks. Neighbors hadn't seen her outside. Teachers hadn't reported her in school. Relatives hadn't heard from her. The police weren't even sure when she had disappeared. And as they dug deeper, the investigation would take a turn no one saw coming. The so-called ransom note wasn't just misleading. It was a distraction, a sloppy attempt to throw police off course. And when they traced it back to its source, it led straight to Elisa Baker. Elisa, who had a history of deception. Elisa, who had changed her stories more times than investigators could count. Elisa, whose MySpace page proudly displayed skulls and dark imagery under the name Gothic Fairy 6668. But even more damning, Elisa, who had already confessed. What started as a missing persons case had just become something far worse. The tension in the room thickened as the polygraph results were revealed. Failed. The machine had spoken, but what the officers didn't know yet was just how much Elisa had already revealed about herself in the moments before. She shifted in her seat, her fingers trembling slightly as they rested on her lap. Her mouth tightened into a thin line, but her eyes betrayed her. Behind the false calm, a storm raged. The walls of the interrogation room seemed to close in on her as the cold truth began to pierce the armor of her lies. When police questioned Elisa, her story crumbled. She had been so sure of herself, weaving a tale she thought would save her, but the pressure of the truth was too much. Her words faltered, her breathing uneven. And then came the admission. She had written the ransom note, the one that had been found on Adam's truck. She had written it, but that wasn't even the worst part. What she said next was a twist that sent shockwaves through the case. Her confession hung in the air, cold and detached, as though she were describing a mundane task. She'd been sick for 2 weeks. We didn't know what to do. The words fell from her lips with unsettling ease. 2 weeks? Zahra had suffered, and not a word was spoken. The confession wasn't drenched in remorse. It was flat matter-of-fact, as if she were explaining a simple inconvenience, a minor mishap. The absence of any real emotion was perhaps the most chilling part. Elisa wasn't just confessing to a death. She was explaining it like it had been nothing more than a consequence of fate. But how could someone speak of such a loss with such dispassion? Was this a mother speaking? Or a woman who had already cut herself off from the humanity of her actions? Elisa claimed Zahra had died of natural causes. She said that she and Adam had panicked, that the moment got out of control. But Elisa's words couldn't erase what had truly happened. According to her, Adam, her husband, Zahra's father, had done the unthinkable. She claimed he had dismembered his own daughter's body and helped her dispose of it. But was that the truth? Or was it just a desperate attempt to shift blame, to escape accountability for her actions? Adam sat in front of the camera, shaking his head in disbelief, the pain evident on his face. Every muscle in his body was tense, every fiber of his being rejecting the very words Elisa had used to accuse him. His breath hitched in his chest as he fought to hold back tears. The weight of the accusation too much to bear. "There's no way I could do that to my child." His voice cracked as the words left his mouth. But they were not just words. They were the truth that no one could take from him. There was no way he could have ever imagined doing harm to his daughter, let alone participate in something so monstrous. His entire life had been dedicated to Zahra's well-being, her care, and her survival. But now, in the wake of her death, Adam found himself drowning in suspicion, his world shattered. Was it possible that someone who had known him for so long could turn on him like this? Was it Elisa's twisted narrative that was the real crime? Or was there something more sinister in the shadows that no one yet understood? The investigation turned to the evidence. Pieces of Zahra that had been discarded with chilling disregard. The first discovery was a prosthetic leg.
And after 2 weeks in custody came another major development. Lisa led police to Zahra's remains.
A symbol of her fight, of her courage in the face of unimaginable hardship. Yet, it was found in a landfill, miles away from her home, buried beneath piles of trash. How could someone take the very thing that helped Zahra live and throw it away like it was nothing? Was it simply an afterthought to them? Or was it a calculated attempt to erase every trace of the little girl's existence? But Elisa was the only one caught in a lie. The investigators were no longer speculating. They had the evidence they needed. The phone records didn't lie. When they tracked Elisa's movements, they placed her, not Adam, at the exact locations where Zahra's body parts had been discarded. The physical evidence became undeniable. And the more they uncovered, the clearer it became that Elisa, not Adam, was the one who had been in control of the situation from the very beginning. The phone records told a story that couldn't be ignored. Elisa had been at the sites where Zahra's remains had been disposed of. Not Adam. Elisa. The investigation was no longer about finding Zahra. Now, it was about unraveling the truth of her death. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together. But what would they reveal? Was Elisa acting alone? Was she merely a woman driven to desperation? Or was there something far darker lurking in the background? And yet, questions lingered. Even with the evidence stacked against Elisa, some still couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Could she have truly acted alone? Could someone else have been involved, manipulating events behind the scenes? Or was Elisa the mastermind, the driving force behind Zahra's tragic end? The investigation had opened a door, but it was still unclear what lay beyond it. Was the truth as simple as it appeared? Or was there a deeper, more complex web of lies that had yet to be exposed? The haunting silence of the case, the growing certainty of Elisa's guilt, only raised more questions. How did it feel to be trapped in your own lies? How did it feel to be caught in a crime so monstrous, so calculated, that even now, it was hard to wrap your mind around it? This was only the beginning. The truth had been uncovered, but it wasn't the whole story. Not yet. And as the investigation continued, the chilling realization sank in. Zahra had been betrayed by those who were supposed to protect her, and justice, it seemed, was still a long way off.
The stepmother of murdered Australian girl Zahra Baker will serve at least 14 years in an American jail. In a deal worked out between the district attorney and her lawyer, 43-year-old Elisa Baker pleaded guilty to second-degree murder.
Elisa Baker is in prison, but many still believe there's more to this story. Was Adam truly uninvolved, or was he just another one of Elisa's victims? The truth may never fully come out, but one thing is certain. Zahra Baker deserved better.
Hickory had been Zahra's home for only a short time, but her death shattered the community. They gathered to mourn her death and to celebrate what would have been her 11th birthday.
If you were moved by Zahra's story and want to stay updated on more gripping true crime cases, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family, because stories like these need to be heard. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let us know what you think happened. And make sure to turn on the bell notification, so you're always in the loop for our latest videos. Thank you for your support and for being part of this journey with us. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.